Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Nonprofit Enthusiast Live. I'm your host, Lashina Williams, and so excited to be back with you all. So, this month, our topic is behind the scenes of strong nonprofits, people, processes, and systems. And I am so excited to have Andrea Ortega back with us. And we're going to talk about this topic and dive in on how to use AI and how not to use AI. So join me as I welcome her up. Hello.
Hi, Sheena. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm super excited to be here again.
Same here. So, for some of our listeners who may not have had a chance to meet you yet, can you share a little bit about your journey into the nonprofit space?
Of course. So I'm Dr. Andrea Ortega. I have been in the consulting space for over a decade, working really, with the grassroots that I ran for about 6 years called Children Beyond Our Borders. And very grassroots, like very volunteer led, very out of the goodness of our hearts. And that really shaped how I view the nonprofit sector, mostly from like what not to do, right?
Mhm,
Like
mhm.
your hearts don't pay the bills, and we are a force to be reckoned in the nonprofit sector. And I took that into my academic career where I focused on nonprofit management, got to work at other larger nonprofits and realized, no, like we should get paid fairly and we should have systems in place operationally, administratively, and overhead is a myth. Like people need to get paid for the work that they do, even in the community, even if it's still out of the goodness of their heart. So I bring that a lot into the consultancy now that I run, but I focus a lot on Spanish speaking, Hispanic led orgs, because a lot of the knowledge I know, it's always better to hear it in your mother tongue and to really connect with the information. And one of the examples is compliance is boring. 990s are boring, they're hard to understand if you speak Spanish first. And so that's what Palante Nonprofits has done, just bringing a lot of that knowledge in Spanish.
Love it. So you touched on this a little bit, like the importance of the people, the processes, the systems, and the nonprofit. So let's
hmm
dive a little bit deeper into what does that look like for the organization. So what tips do you have for organizations when it comes to building your nonprofit in these areas?
Yeah, and I'm gonna be. I've worked with large ones, so I understand like 100, employees on payroll. I understand that, but my heart and soul is with these very grassroots, small. And I think my tip would be that you should know the value of your time, whether or not you want have the funds to pay yourself.
Mhm.
Like and it all starts with knowing the value of your time, so that when the grant drops you can speak to it and you can say, this is going to fund, I know that it costs this much to run our operations. Now, instead of being 100% volunteer led, now I can build a team and staff, and this is how much it would cost. But a lot of people will wait for funds to show on their lap to kind of have that data and that understanding of the systems, right? And I think my tip would be like, even if you are all volunteer run, even if it's year one, what is the value of your time for those people and volunteers? And I'm not talking about your board, right? Because board are volunteer roles. I'm talking about if you're feeding the homeless, like what does operations look like to hand out 100 meals? What is the cost of that, so that you can speak to it? And then the preparation, right? Some people put like, I love watching like bakers or like homemade bakers, and they're like, if they'll be like, like, why is your cake $300? And it's like, because I want to be paid, not just for the materials, but for the labor and for all the things I had to do. Like, you bake the cake, you have to freeze it, and you have to thaw it, and you have, like, depending on what that is. And they understand now, like, the value of your time, or at least the successful ones, right? Why do these
Mhm.
small businesses fail? Because they don't understand the value of their time. And so, like I said, even if you're in the beginning, even if you're there, like, know the value of what that operationally is. And then if you have a lot of more mid-size, larger, you have to do that every year. Like, you have to check out what the market value is to keep your good employees. You have to check how much inflation went up. You have to to know the value of your time, of your operations at that moment. It's not one and done. It happens yearly. And not just staff wise, but like what is something that is taking them forever to do?
I love that. So the value of your time, and something that you talked about is kind of like your passion being with grassroots organizations. And I also have that heart as well. And I oftentimes have the conversation like, because I've worked for large organizations as well. And it's like, wait a minute, where was this part? Like I didn't have to worry about this part. It just happened. Like, like HR or the different areas that as a founder in an organization or even a small business, you're almost touching on every area
Hmm.
because you're starting it from scratch. So yes, moving from those sign-in sheets that was on paper, and then now we got digital systems that can take care of it for no cost, still no to low cost, still to make things a little bit more efficient. So I love that you talked about that heart for grassroots and organizations kind of starting out, because there are some pain points there that even with experience and working with large budgets, a large amount of teams, that you may not necessarily um, have had the opportunity to touch on. And then also you talking about the value of your time and knowing your time, because I do remember starting out, yeah, 100% volunteer led organization. um, I mean, you don't think you don't factor in time as much. You're more thinking about how can I get these materials that I need to be able to run this program, or how can I get this to pay for this. But time is like the last thing that typically is thought of, and it's very important to keep your doors open as an organization and avoid burnout.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
all leads back to burnout too, right? Not
Uh
enough
huh.
staff, not all of that. It's like you don't know the value of the time that you have, where the gaps are. And I think too, like I've gotten the chance to work with organizations who have really strong relationship with their funders, which first of all, super rare. Once
Mhm.
I find
Mhm.
out, I'm like, you're my ideal client. But two, like, um, funders want to know where the gaps are so they can help and they can support that. I've seen an uptick of funders being like, hey, we've identified this gap, and we had some feelers out there with two consultants who can help teach us this, and they'll pay directly to fund whatever capacity building is, because you took the opportunity to find the efficiency, find solutions, and you're ready for the funds. I've actually seen that happen a lot last year, about 2 to 3 times with different orgs. And then all you have to do is communicate clearly, right? I think funders want that. And when we talk about, we always say, I always go to these workshops, and the first question is like, well, how do you build relationships with a funder? And like, that's one of them. Like sending them an update. Like, I know you gave us 30,000 last year. I wanted to update you on the needs now. And like, could you do that? And like, that's a relationship. From there, inviting them, maybe sending a follow up like, hey, it's been 6 months since we did this training. We weren't able to do A, B, C, and D. That's building a relationship. And so it doesn't always mean like take them on a date or something. Like it really
Mhm.
just means keeping them in the loop.
Mhm.
And so that value has also been something I've seen increase. And I think it's important because funders hold all of the power. They write the check.
Mhm.
And I think the only way to kind of flip that power is if we're also like transparent with ourselves. It doesn't have to always be like we have our stuff together, that's why you gave us this much money. No, it's like, hey, we were able to execute A, B, C, and D. This is where we're identifying a gap. Could you help be a part of that? And if not, like you'll find a way. But yeah, all of that goes back into funding.
Mhm.
Lashina, I don't know about you, but everybody just says my problem is more funds, and then you dig deeper, and it's operationally, it's your
Right.
board, it's your
Yep.
systems.
Mhm.
Like I was just talking about someone, like it's always going to be a chicken and the egg situation, but like you don't have control over funds landing in your lap. You have control over your systems, and you have control over your people and how you spend it and the time. So fix that. And then maybe
Mhm.
funds will come, like, because no one promises grants. So, 501c3 is not that. So,
Right.
I'm not saying funds won't drop. There are some people who, like, you talk to the right person in the elevator and they will write you a check. Those things do happen. Not saying they don't, but like you have more control over those things than you do of like being in the right elevator with someone who will believe in your heart and do that.
Love that. Um, Yeah, I'm just reflecting on a few of the things you said, especially with the relationship with the funders. I think that is crucial, being able to have that conversation with them. And a lot of funders, they want to help you. I had to sit down with the funder, and it was just an amazing like conversation, because especially when it aligns. Let me say that. Let me say, when the relationship aligns, when the way that they give and the work that you do aligns, like the conversation is just beautiful, because through them uplifting you, whether it's your organization as a leader, it helps them also reach their outcomes as well. So I love that you talked about being able to have those conversations with funders, and I've had conversation with several funders, and they kind of keep me in the know, as to kind of, here's what we're hearing in our world. This is what we're talking about, kind of thing. What does that look like for the work that you all are doing? So, and it keeps us, like, it keeps, I guess you could say, our a finger on the pulse of what's kind of going on, not just within our community, but also in the funders community as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if you're gonna ask this, but yeah, it's like if you have you don't have to have operations and all of that like perfect, but you have to understand it and speak to it. And I think that's a really big difference when you look at organizations who get the grants and who don't. Yes, there is systematically in the system like the same organizations get it, but it's not why don't I get it? It's what am I doing that I could do differently, to attract that application better, to do that. And one of the ways is not to just chat GPT in your grant application.
Come
So
on.
no, I mean, look, I love ChatGPT, and so I've spent a lot of time too the past year, like 2 years. I've sometimes get hired by funders to work with nonprofits in certain aspects, and recently it's been a lot of like when they submit the reports. Again, grassroots, wearing all of the hats, so they might not. This might be the first time they're submitting a grant. I've actually had to do that for federal grants as well,
Mhm.
and I could read an application, right? Because to submit a report, you need to know what the application said that you promised you were going to do. And I can immediately tell it's ChatGPT. At least put your spin. You can teach it to speak like you. You can
Mhm.
literally feed it old writing scripts and be like, this is my tone. This is how I am. Um, not saying I haven't made that mistake because I have. Again, I do love to use AI, even though I'm obviously also understand the environmental impact there and I'm trying to do my best also to learn that side so I can at some point do it responsibly. But if you are going to use it, I would say the biggest thing too is like I really want to curse and say it, but like don't don't promise world peace. Okay, if you're
Mhm.
inputting an application and it says write me OKRs, KPIs, SMART goals, whatever outcome. Now they're using the word outcomes a lot.
Mhm.
Do not promise that like my program is going to save the world's peace by the 5 students I'm going to tutor. Like
Mm.
that is not realistic. You need
Mhm.
to make sure you feed it. I'm going to give you a tip right now for prompt writing if you're going to use it for your OKRs. One, feed it an old application or an old report so it knows what have you used in the past. Feed
Mhm.
it things that say, hey, the only data we have on our hands that we know we can track is attendance and grades. That's it. Like feed it information you have so it doesn't say that we are going to track the success by like the joy of our tutoring program
Mhm.
and you don't even ask if they enjoy it at the end of the day because now you have to go create a survey for it. So um if you're going to use AI for those kind of things, definitely feed it what you have and what is within your capacity. Because if not, I guarantee you, ChatGPT will be like, our 10 student tutoring program is going to change,
Mhm.
the world and break no, it might break the cycle of poverty for those 10 families, but you also have to, but how? Because it doesn't happen in a year of tutoring. It happens over time, like, and then maybe you can add
Mhm.
if your program provides higher education scholarships, but like feed it what don't be afraid to say, and it stops here. It stops when they reach 10th grade. It stops when they whatever. Like because if not, it's going to overpromise, and then you won't be able to deliver in your grant reporting. And and that goes back to operationally too. Like um it's gonna let you see like, oh my gosh, maybe we should be and let's say ChatGPT sometimes still makes its own thing. It'll be like, yeah, you can measure the joy of your tutoring program and the impact it has. I was like, okay, maybe there's room to have like, but you're gonna have to say how you're measuring joy.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell people, like, you know how the airport has these happy and like
Mm-hmm.
unhappy buttons, like, did you
Mm-hmm.
like the service of your bathroom, the
Yeah.
cleanliness or whatever? And I was like, you might have to put that, and on their way out every student clicks their sentiment, like,
Mm-hmm.
and then maybe you can actually put the joy that tutoring brings to kids, but like
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have that, you can't promise that. And so
Yeah.
stick with what you have operationally, what your team has the capacity to do. When you're using AI to, and let's say it's not a good application, maybe you're tell ChatGPT its process, like how you run your programs, and see if it'll give you some ideas on how to do something better, or where there's room to automate,
Mm-hmm.
and room to like help bring technology in before. And I would always caution to do that before you're ready to hire somebody else, because we tend to fix problems with people, and maybe in the problem might be
Come on, say that
operational.
again.
We tend to fix problems with people, and that's why we're always asking for a bigger budget and like a bigger,
Mm-hmm.
bigger, more salaries and more overhead. Which again, overhead is great. We need it.
Mm-hmm.
Any funders listening here, please pay us. And I say us like are the nonprofit leaders I get to work with,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, yeah, try to see before you go out all that, and do that. And I've seen, because I'm in the consulting world, I've also seen an uptick too in like fractional. You might
Mm-hmm.
need someone, but you might not need someone full time. They might just need to come in and teach your team how to set up and do this, and like don't be afraid to ask for that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I come from that world, I did not structure my firm to be $300 that do that. I could do it. I think I did it. And I realized my heart and my niche, and I know where I can make my strongest impact is with my grassroots. So I've also done my due diligence in operational, so I can charge what these nonprofits that I do want to work with,
Mm-hmm.
right, can do. And so yeah, so if you're a nonprofit out there, if anything of that resonated to you, like, talk to it. I have this weird relationship that I like talk to it. I'll be like, this is what I'm thinking right now. Tell me where something I'm not seeing. This is the way I'm running, the way I contact clients or leads. What am I missing? And you can do that with your processes and your operations. And if you're gonna feed it the grant application, just make sure you review it for realistic things.
I love it. And so that's why our topic this month really talks about people, processes, and systems, because you need all three, not just like you mentioned, like sometimes you have an issue, you just hire someone, but if you hire that person, there's not a process in place, there's not systems to make things a little bit more efficiently. It's just going to be people there just trying to figure out like what's going on kind of thing. So building your processes and systems also help. You need all three of that. So kind of take a look at your organization and figure out what areas can we improve in. So even with myself, when I get stuck, that's what I think about. Okay, do we have the people already here that can help with this issue? Do we have processes in place to be able to help it? If not, then what does that look like? And then do we have the systems? And then using, sometimes I do have to go into chat as my partner, like, listen, this is what we got. We got the people, we got the processes, we got systems, similar to what you're saying. Like, where's my blind spot here? What am I not seeing that we need? And it's pretty good. It'll kind of say to you, like, listen, you got all of that, but here's an area, and it kind of pulls some best practices. And I honestly would take that information and go do some more research on it, because I will tell you, chat is great, but you have to have some foundational knowledge as well to know when it's kind of leading you down a path that you don't want to go as well. So I love that you talked about using AI responsibly. uh, any other tips before we close out for today that you'd like to share with the organizations?
Well, something you said like clicked on me too, because I kind of said like, don't hire or hire, but also invest in your team, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, um, you said something that's beautiful in terms of like, I look at the people. Do we have the people? And you might
Mhm.
have the people, but maybe not that skill or that talent right now. So maybe someone wants to learn it, like invest in their professional development. Like, oh, you have been our development manager, maybe entry level, everything. You just told me that you want to learn how to, you know, do more like donor stewardship on the back end
Mhm.
and create pipelines for leads. Like, great, there's this course, like
Mhm.
so like I don't know, it was beautiful the way you worded it. And I was like, yeah, like I work with some orgs too who are quick to go to the consulting route, which again, go to the consulting route. But also
Yes.
like, and I'll even put in like one of the ways that I keep costs down is like, do you have the staff that I can train to do this? Because
Mhm.
if that happens, that's different than me going in there and like doing it for you, right? But if you're
Mhm.
telling me you have the staff, then I can be like, okay, great, I can be over their shoulder, guiding them every step of the way, and that means less time for me, and that means
Mhm.
and so that's the same kind of concept, like invest in them,
Mhm.
instead of hiring a whole new person, who obviously may be out of your budget if you're not there yet, because development directors should be making, a lot of the good ones make over 6 digits, and that might be
Mhm.
hard for an organization trying to grow. So then upskill your people, identify the ones who want to stay there, who want to learn, who want to grow with the organization, and see if they want to do that. And I just thought that was wonderful. As far as another tip, yeah, I would say ChatGPT and AI and the use of it is always going to. I love that you said partner, because it is. It's my
Mhm.
partner. It doesn't.
Mhm.
I've done it where I feed it like an empty, like, give me a strategic plan for this org, and it does not. Like, yeah, it spits
Mhm.
out something that when you first see, I was like, oh my god, it just did it for me. But if you read closely, and you should always read
Mhm.
closely,
Yes.
it's not realistic. It doesn't really align with the activities you do. And I find it that I work better when I break it up. So I do
Mhm.
use, even when I do presentations or workshops, but I'll break it up by slide, because I know that there's information here and knowledge of transfer that I want to give to the AI. And so it's the same, don't say, write me a whole grant application for this. Maybe ask it to do an outline and then go section by section, feeding it the things that it wants and needs. And it's great to look. It's also great for operationally seeing if there's any gaps. You can ask it to research any tools out there that could do this, and it might be able to. But yeah, I think it's a partner. It's AI. It's not here to replace any of us. It can't teach joy.
Mhm.
But it will promise world peace, and it will do great things. But so it's your job to like be realistic on the stuff that you hold the power in terms of like what you present and how you execute the organization. So make sure that you're always a part of that.
I'm going to go here in a conversation with you a little bit. Okay. So so one of the things is, like when I go into an organization and working with it out with the organization, I always share that my goal is to work myself outside of a job as a consultant. That's your goal, is to help build capacity, and then your organization grows, and then we could step on to the next project, or move on from there, kind of thing, is the goal. And with that, I don't have a concern. Certain positions, certain jobs, you're like, oh, that might not be here in a couple of years. But I don't have a concern about really good consultants in the nonprofit space jobs being like taken away, because there's a level of knowledge that AI cannot replace. So I just want to go there with you a little bit,
Oh,
just
please,
because,
let's.
yeah, like, let's talk about it, because there I've heard, or I've even seen messages like in where nonprofits would be like, oh hey, I'll just, I need help with this, I'm gonna go to chat, kind of thing, when really, there is a level of, you do need that additional support to kind of come in. And the time you're trying to get chat to tell you what you want to know, you can do that with a knowledgeable consultant quicker, along with other background knowledge behind the work.
Let's go there, because oh my god. First of all, I love that you said that, because I've also worked in other consulting firms before launching my own, and the model is not realistic for nonprofits, or again, or they actually, a lot of consultants will set up themselves so that they're needed and wanted for a long period of time. And that's not sustainable. I'm with you. Like, I want to come in, do what you set out to do. And if you want me to be a part of the team, sure. Like, there's
Mhm.
retainer based models that I have and stuff like that. But to your point, like, I want to capacitate you. Is that a word? I want capacity for you. And that's
Yes.
one of the reasons that I think, I don't have anything like if I have a retainer, I'm like, hey, just give me 30 days and we can finish. Like, I want to, if you say, Andrea, you did such a good job. We don't need you the rest of the contract. Like, that's fine. I
Mhm.
want to make sure that you feel like, I came and left it better than I did. So let's acknowledge that. You and I are very
Mhm.
different consultants from whatever other big firms, or even, and not, no
Mhm.
shame to them, no shame to
Right.
them, their
Right.
client is different than mine, right?
Mhm.
But I just want to acknowledge that. And two, I know it's not in your place, because like that strategy part that I was saying, I was like, ChatGPT will throw you the whole strategic plan and it'll give you the whole grant application. um One, just how you did it with ChatGPT, funders now have ChatGPT and they can read your application and call it out. And I think
Mhm.
I saw one application that said, I there was one application I saw recently that said, "Don't use ChatGPT. We know." They were literally
Come
asking
on.
for like grammar mistakes and like commas and all this stuff, and
Yeah.
I was like, we might see a shift there. The whole
Right.
philanthropy sector might say, "I want paper." I want
Right.
handwritten back, because they might get sick of how many repetitive generic answers they see in the application. Quote
Yes.
me on secret.
Mhm.
Most funders do want organizations capable of executing the money they receive, but they also want to be there for you. They're making a commitment to partner with you. And it goes
Yeah.
back to the beginning of the conversation where it's like, you have to be honest about what you accomplished, you didn't, where the gap is, so that you can build that relationship. Because, you know, funders will say, hey, it's been 6 months since we gave you $100,000. How have you been? And like,
Mhm.
it's perfect. Everything's going great. They're going to be like, oh, okay, I guess they don't need us again. And like,
Mhm.
there's like, hey, a better answer would be like, hey, thanks so much for checking in. We've been able to stay on budget, but we recognize this need. A perfect org is right now is, some of the orgs I work with is, hey, we've seen a decrease in our attendance because our community is afraid to come out due to ICE,
Mhm.
um, and they posed the issue, the problem, and then they came back and kind of said, and this is what we're going to do in place of, but we
Mhm.
might need your help with this. Can you connect us to someone who knows that? And so like
Mhm.
that's building a relationship. You're showing transparency and doing that. But yeah, it's going back to your conversation is, no, ChatGPT will not replace consultants' knowledge, anything, because you're the one who knows the org better. And
Mhm.
if you write a strategic plan, it's a lot of fluff. It's really nice fluff that sounds really great. And then I even challenge you. I've had two orgs ask me to write a strategic plan. I was like, okay, but I don't do PDFs. I'll make you a PDF at the end if you want me to, like to print and
Mhm.
to have, but like we don't do PDFs. Let's
Mhm.
go into your Asana, let's go into your Monday, let's go
Mhm.
directly into your Trello, and let's build the implementation of a 3 or 5 year
Mhm.
plan in there. Because if you just want a pretty doc, then that ain't me. Like you're
Mm.
not gonna implement some checklist. You're not. Let's go
Mhm.
into like the things that you use every day to do that. And that's where what we
Yeah.
know does, like
Yep.
there goes where the years of experience of doing that, and we
Yep.
have to do it without ChatGPT. But I remember going back to like, let me find strategic plans for other orgs so I can like
Mhm.
mimic and model it. But I'm like, no, but that's not what my org does. So at the end of the day,
Yep.
you were still the true, like uh these generations are not gonna like ever have to do a bibliography again or anything. It's so bananas. But you are the first source of truth, right? So
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
so make sure you exchange that knowledge. Yeah.
Love it. Love it. So tell us how we can keep in touch with you.
Yeah. So if you learned anything, please follow me on Instagram, Palante Nonprofits. I do have a podcast. It's in Spanglish. it's not that great, but I say it's my journal to the nonprofit sector. So, definitely listen on the podcast. I bring, there are also